From KPFK in Los Angeles, California, Valley Free Radio in Florence, Massachusetts, WNUC in Detroit, and biketalk.org worldwide, this is Bike Talk.
Bike Talk.
Welcome to Bike Talk. I'm Taylor Nichols.
And I'm Nick Richard.
Nick, the sun is shining in Los Angeles. The rain has stopped, and the streets are closed to cars in my neighborhood.
CicLAvia?
Yeah, but isn't that great? I mean, it was a beautiful day on Sunday of this last week. CicLAvia is, of course, a Los Angeles open streets event that happens 8 or 9 times throughout the year. And this year, in this time, it was right on Melrose, right near my house.
What was it called? They always have a name for their...
Well, this one was actually a little bit different. It was called Stranger Things CicLAvia, and Stranger Things is that TV show. You know, I don't watch it. Do you watch it?
I don't, but I'm not going to say it's because it's not good because everybody likes it.
No, they love it because CicLAvia was packed. I mean, it's packed anyways usually. And Melrose, the street that it was on, it was about a 4-mile straight line. And I guess Paramount Studios produces it. I'm not sure because the CicLAvia went right by Paramount Studios, and they had all these Stranger Things booths set up everywhere, and they had actors walking around in wardrobe of some of the characters of the show, and they were giving away swag and all that stuff.
Wow. Stranger Things fans, I don't know if everybody knew about it. It's probably the regular CicLAvia crowd.
Well, it was certainly a lot of that, but it sure looked like there were a lot of Stranger Things fans, people wearing, Stranger Things shirts and, dressing up and things like that. I guess it's season 5. I don't know.
I heard something about CicLAvia losing funding from Metro. Is that why maybe they're going with Paramount?
Well, that brought up that question for me of do we think it's a good thing that CicLAvia now has corporate sponsorship? And I don't know if it's going to continue to have that kind of corporate sponsorship or tie-ins. Or do we think it should come from the Metro budget?
Well, I guess I kind of think that some streets should just be car-free a lot more permanently. But at least there should be CicLAvia paid for by the city. Yeah, I think in New York City, the DOT.
But is it bad to have a corporate tie-in?
Well, it'd be better if it were publicly funded, probably.
I guess. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it. And part of me felt I was glad that there were people, I think, at CicLAvia who were there for Stranger Things and not really there for the open street event. But maybe that opened their eyes to how the city could be if there were less cars.
Well, there's mayors in places like Seattle and New York City who are proposing things like super blocks and pedestrian zones and car-free streets. And I think we should ask for everything we can get from the city before we go, looking to commercial.
Right. Well, maybe, this car-free street or this school street is brought to you by, the Ford Motor Company or something like that. And they're the ones who pay to block off the street. I doubt Ford would do that, but that's an interesting concept.
You said Ford? Like the car company?
Well, that's what I said, because that's all that came to my mind.
That would be ironic.
Wouldn't it, though? That does bring up another issue that I wanted to talk about quickly. Because I was talking to someone about this the other day. They had listened to the show, and they were bothered by the idea that we were sort of, in their minds, forgiving personal responsibility of people who cause traffic violence and blaming it all on the system.
Yeah. Well, if you're advocating for reform, for changes, for things that make it safer for people to be outside of a car, I don't think the most effective thing that you can do is focusing on the drivers putting their phones down and, not drinking and telling pedestrians to wear bright clothes and people on bikes to, I don't know what you tell people on bikes besides wear bright clothes.
Right, right. We'll follow the laws certainly and things like that. But I was trying to make him understand that we're not trying to forgive personal responsibility. We're trying to point the finger at the system with which that personal responsibility fails. Does that make sense?
Uh, what are you trying to say?
Well, I'm trying to say that the road system that we have in place allows people to be on their phones while they're driving because the road is wide and straight and free of obstacles in the road. If there were curves and turns and Paris has played with this idea of not having stop signs, and it's actually made corners, certain corners, safer because everybody pays attention at that intersection.
Hmm. Yeah, well, we know how to tweak every factor in our streets, in our street systems, in our street networks to make deaths and injuries go down. I mean, we could have speed limiters
Right.
in cars. You could have a breathalyzer in a car. You could
Right.
have things like speed cams that we know make people drive slower, but a lot of people think they should just have the narrow roads and just separated infrastructure for people on bikes and pedestrians. But any of that is better than telling people not to drink and drive, and that's it.
Well, that brings up a story that I saw in the paper. A 13-year-old boy in Dana Point, California, was walking to school with his brother at 8:30 in the morning on November 18th, and he was hit and killed by a drunk driver. And of course, the drunk driver is at fault. He should not have been drinking and he should not have been driving a car. But the system with which that happened allowed it to happen. The man has been arrested and has been charged with murder. It was his third DUI. He had two previous DUI convictions,
Yeah.
and he was out on parole at the time of the incident. So there's a system that somehow allowed him to get back in a car and drive drunk. Whether that car needed to have a breathalyzer to start, the system allowed him to kill.
In so many ways. I mean, yeah, well, he had two DUIs. We don't know if he still had a license,
Right.
he killed a kid on the way to school. So would that happen with a super block where, cars aren't allowed to cut through people's neighborhoods or pedestrian
Right.
zone like they're going to do in New York City or school streets?
Yeah, I was just going to say, speaking of which, that comes from the top. That comes from the mayor and that comes from the city council in whatever city you might be. And, we've recently spoken with a panel about Mayor Mamdani in New York and the things that he wants to try. And you recently sat down with a panel in Seattle because they have a new mayor there.
Yeah, Katie Wilson.
Great. Well, I don't know that we're going to solve the issue of personal responsibility versus systematic change, but let's hear what they have to say about Katie Wilson in Seattle.
We have some Seattle bike advocates on the call. Merlin, we had you on the show in the past. You're on the board of Seattle Neighborhood Greenways, and
Right.
we had you on to talk about your people protected bike lane, which actually resulted in a permanent bike lane being installed.
Right.
But we're here for the new mayor, Katie Wilson, and I thought maybe you could introduce everybody on this call.
Oh, I guess I can do that. They're all friends. So we have Tom Fucoloro, who writes the Seattle bike blog and has been covering everything bike related in Seattle for 10 plus years now? 12?
15.
15. Oh my God. We have Brie Gyncild, who's one of the co-leaders of the Central Seattle Greenways group that I'm also a participant in. And Gordon Padelford, who is the executive director of Seattle Neighborhood Greenways, a coalition of neighborhood groups that work for safe streets for walking, biking, rolling, and living.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. We had a panel on Zoran Mamdani of New York bike advocates from Streets Blog and Transportation Alternatives and Streetopia Upper West Side. And we have kind of a similar thing happening. Tom is the journalist. Tom, do you want to set the stage and give us some background?
Yeah, the incumbent mayor, Bruce Harrell, was seen as a very strong coming into the election cycle. But he had made sort of a big political mistake during a special election in early 2025, where he backed an unpopular version of a social housing vote that went to the public, and the public like kind of overwhelmingly voted against the version of the initiative that he wanted, and instead went with the much more ambitious version of this social housing package that was being led by someone named Katie Wilson as one of the coalition members of this social housing. And when we saw such a big public disagreement with the mayor on a pretty important issue in Seattle, which is the ability to afford homes at all, both low income and middle income people having trouble affording homes, and the people seeing so much promise in this concept of social housing and investing in building publicly owned housing instead of just relying on the private sector to do that. The public vote showed that it was a very popular concept and that the mayor was out of step with this idea. And so that inspired Katie Wilson to think he's not as strong as it would seem. So when the primary came around, she won over 50%, even though there were, like a dozen candidates running. And she defeated the incumbent in the primary by like 10%, which was just shocked everybody.
Especially the incumbent.
Especially the incumbent, because they underestimated her. She's been making partnerships and being a good coalition partner for at least 15 years in Seattle. And that has all added up to her having a pretty wide base that the existing power brokers in the city didn't see coming until it was too late for them. They spent $2 million attacking her, mostly just like personal attacks on her, calling her poor because she didn't own a car and rents a small apartment. And her parents gave her some money to help with childcare while she was running for office. And that was used as look, she's living off her parents' dollar. And, just these ridiculous personal attacks. But as Mayor-elect Wilson noted in her victory speech, those attack ads were always going after her, and they weren't really going after her policies because the things that she was saying and that she was standing for were very popular and weren't worth attacking. They'd lose.
Yeah.
Did you guys see that she has posted something that lets everybody know that after a grueling interview process, she has a new job and won't be requiring help from her parents anymore?
Yeah, that's great.
So the issue that we're talking about is affordability, but there was also transportation, right? Wasn't Katie with the Transit Riders Union?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. She's founded and led the Transit Riders Union. It was very important, which is very important. Coalition member in transportation issues for the last 10, 15 years. Her campaign did not focus on bikes per se, and she doesn't present herself as a bike rider, but she is somebody who has not been incapacitated by the disease of car brain. That's the big advantage that she has, is she understands that public policy cannot continue to prioritize cars and bow to the wishes of the people who still believe that cars are the central component of the transportation system. She doesn't own a car. She travels by transit now and lives in a small apartment with her husband and little daughter. And she's one of us.
Katie used to travel by bike primarily until she had her child a couple of years ago. And so now has more to transit. What Merlin said is accurate. The campaign focused on affordability rather than transportation. But Katie had the backing of folks who've worked with her in transportation over the years. And you can't talk about affordability. You can't talk about housing without also including transportation in the city. Right. So it's kind of a package deal.
Gordon, what was your enthusiasm for Katie based on? Which of her policies or was it all of them that you were interested in?
Yeah, I'm very excited. So I will have to say as a disclaimer that Seattle Neighborhood Greenways is a 501c3. So we don't endorse candidates, and we didn't endorse in this race as an organization. Personally, though, I was very excited about Katie. We had worked together starting back in 2018. There was another mayor who came into office, Jenny Durkin, and she came into office and decided that she wanted to cancel and delay and water down a bunch of walking and biking and transit projects. And so I actually reached out to Katie and some other folks, and we formed this coalition called the MASS Coalition, Move All Seattle Sustainably Coalition. And it's comprised of about a dozen different environmental and transportation organizations. And really quickly, Katie became the main leader of that group. because she just is a natural leader. She brings people together. She's thoughtful. She's able to get stuff done and isn't interested in grandstanding. Like at the end of the day, she really wants to make sure that we're making a difference in people's lives. And so that North Star for her has always been really clear to me. And I just respect people a lot who have that North Star. So yeah, I've been enthusiastic about Katie. A big challenge in Seattle is that we like to talk about big dreams, but we have a hard time implementing them. And Katie's the kind of person who is not going to be afraid to take some risk and ruffle some feathers to get those things done. If you listen to the incumbent, Mayor Bruce Harrell, he says a lot of great things. I think he actually has a very intuitive sense of what the Seattle public wants to hear. But the challenge is where the rubber meets the road, we're not seeing this sort of results. Just to give you one example, the most dangerous street in the city is Aurora Avenue. It also has the most popular bus route in the state. And this is the election year, so he came out with this Northern Lights concept of we're going to do something really big and bold on Aurora, but never put pen to paper about what that actually really meant. And in fact, he didn't actually have a policy platform on his campaign website until after the primary, when he realized he needed to tune up his communications around what he actually wanted to do with the second term. Versus, if you looked at Katie's transportation platform and housing platform from the beginning, if anything, it was very wonky because she's a policy nerd at heart and is interested in public policy that can make people's lives better.
Well, what were some of the points in the platform?
One area of contrast was superblocks. The idea of traffic calming a dense neighborhood to the point where people can walk in the street. And, Barcelona's obviously been very noted for that tactic. And it was an interesting contrast with Harrell because Harrell had parachuted into a conversation about superblocks to end it. And here you have Katie Wilson talking about it and actually bringing it up in her election night speech. So I think that's just a prime example of a contrast between the two of them. Another one that came up was Lake Washington Boulevard. For folks who don't know Seattle, we're bordered on one side by the Puget Sound, the saltwater, on the other side by Lake Washington. And there's a 3-mile stretch along Lake Washington that is owned by the Parks Department. And there's currently a 2-way road running along it. And that has been a flashpoint over the last year because it's been pretty obvious to everyone who's following that Harrell has been slowing and delaying and canceling bits of a safety project that were supposed to happen on that street because he has wealthy donors who don't like that project. So I think that was also a contrast. There was a couple other examples where it became really clear that the outgoing administration had a big priority around constituent services for those who are wealthy and well-connected. And I think Katie was able to make a really strong contrast. Her slogan was, "This is your city," right? And sort of returning the power back to the people because she comes from that community organizing base.
This is Merlin. Katie has been someone who has no desire to be grandiose, to be in the public view. She's worked behind the scenes and her name had not been out in public associated with these incredible policy wins that she had actually been a key player in adopting. The incumbent, Bruce Harrell, actually did her an enormous favor in the primary when he recognized that of this big list of names that people really didn't know, he picked out Katie's name and put her name and photo on his campaign material, trying to scare people into thinking that she was a scary, dangerous, radical socialist that was, going to ruin the city. For many people, that was the first time they'd ever heard Katie's name or seen her photo. I think that was it was a big mistake on the part of the incumbent because Katie is not a publicity hound. She's somebody who gets things done.
It reminds me of Zoran Mamdani. They called him a communist. They called him a lot of things. I think it just helped him. And there's other things in common too. I mean, basically urbanism has been winning local elections this last round. Right. Do you see this as being a thing that could translate to national? What do you see as being the takeaway from this?
This is Brie. I wouldn't assume a larger trend. I've seen a lot of comparison between Mamdani and Wilson. I think of them as similar in some ways, but I think of them as parallel rather than connected. They are both speaking to a desire in their cities for grounded policy that helps everyday people afford really outrageously priced cities. Here in Seattle, there's the affordability crisis. We've got a lot of homelessness, a drug issue that's really out of control. And we have a lot of center-right folks who are talking a lot about crime and scaring people. And I know there is some crime and some of that is serious stuff, but mostly what we have is social service needs. We really need to get people housed. We really need to get people the services they need. And I think that that's what Katie was plugging into. And it sounds to me like that's a lot of what Mamdani was plugging into. But I think it's about this time and this place. I wouldn't necessarily draw conclusions about a national trend. And I don't know, maybe other people have different ideas, but Katie's very emblematic of Seattle, right? I think she really speaks to who we are and what we value. And what's really exciting to me is, I mean, I tried to get her to run for office many years ago and she had no interest because she really isn't somebody who takes all the credit and stands in the limelight. And so I feel like this is almost sacrificial on her part to do this for our city with a 2-year-old, you know?
Yeah.
It's the first time in many years that we've had a mayor who has a history of cycling for transportation, who understands the need to get people out of cars if we're going to meet our climate goals and our equity goals and just be a saner city, because we just don't have the space for all the vehicles, among other things. And we have had some decent directors of transportation, but they've always been stymied by the mayors we've had. And for the first time, I think we've really got the mayoral support for our Department of Transportation to do the bold things that a lot of our planners really want to do. I'm really excited about that potential while recognizing that there are all kinds of challenges and it's still going to take a lot of work. But we have a strong mayor system. And for once, that strong mayor is going to be pushing for bike lane.
Yeah. Tom, what about you? What are you looking forward to with Katie Wilson?
Katie so much represents the ideal that people say they want, and yet we never vote for. You know, this person who isn't just beholden to the money, someone who is willing to, listen to any community group that cares about an issue enough to get their neighbors together, right? And she'll come listen to them. And this is what people say they want from a politician. The difference with Mamdani, he's such a charismatic figure, and he's kind of got a cult of personality around him, and watching his videos are sort of mesmerizing. He's got such a attractive energy, that you just want to be part of whatever he's doing. He's going, watching YouTube or Instagram reels or whatever of him meeting people on the street and seeing everyone's infectious excitement for him. And he kind of built up so much power through that. And Katie has absolutely not done that.
And as far as where, this is Merlin again, where bikes fit in, bikes are a critical, basic component of an affordable transportation system. They're not some weird niche issue. And Katie understands that a real affordable, sustainable transportation system that is capable of meeting our ambitious climate goals has got to take bikes seriously as part of the transportation system and not be seen as somehow taking away the space that's owed to people in cars, which is the way that the other, middle of the road, supposedly middle, outside of the bike lane, politicians view bikes as just kind of an annoyance that they somehow have to accommodate, rather than this critical component of the future. Bikes are the most popular form of transportation around the world. We're just in some fantasy land thinking that we don't need to pay serious attention to bikes. And that's something that Katie understands.
Seattle is in this perhaps unique position where the way that bikes usually play out is we have these really, really, really good plans, and then the mayor just sort of under-delivers that plan. So Katie is coming in an enviable position where we have this really good plan, and the radical action would be to just build what's in the plan and don't water it down. Don't take those calls from donors who don't like this or that, and then, cut this part and cut that bike lane and things like that. All she has to do is put someone in place who's going to deliver it as written, because we're lucky enough to have already done the work to have a good plan on the books. So that's the other thing is we're not asking for this huge new vision for biking because we kind of have the vision. We need someone who's going to deliver it. That's part of our excitement.
But we're going to have to be behind, we're going to have to be active in it. It's not like we're off the hook. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is great. We're definitely going to have to be active, but in many ways, really, what's key is hiring the right Department of Transportation director and getting out of their way. letting them do the right thing.
But this is Gordon, and for your listeners, I would say there's never been a better time to get engaged in bike advocacy in Seattle, and would invite folks to get involved however you want. Seattle Neighborhood Greenways, we are a grassroots coalition of neighborhood groups that are run by volunteers and supported by staff, including myself and my colleagues. So now is a great chance to get involved and really make a difference. Because like Tom mentioned, Katie wants to lead by having community propose ideas and build campaigns around ideas. These projects are still going to be difficult, right? This is changing our right of way that has been in this status quo car dominated culture for generations now. And change is hard. So even with someone at the top who really believes in that, it's going to require building significant political support from the ground up to make those changes possible. So I'll just plug seattlegreenways.org/volunteer, and we'd love to have you. We have some happy hours coming up, some orientations coming up, and it's a really exciting time for Seattle bike advocacy.
All right, Merlin, Brie, Tom, go to, like Gordon said, go to Seattle Neighborhood Greenways Coalition. Is it all
seattlegreenways.org/volunteer.
And go to Seattle Bike Blog.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
All right.
That's it. Yeah.
And read Tom's book.
Oh, yeah. What's the book again?
Yeah.
Kids.
Biking Uphill in the Rain, the story of Seattle from behind the handlebars.
That's awesome. Have a great 4 years. What is it, 4 years?
Yeah, or more.
Oh, right. Yeah, it keeps going. All right. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, Nick.
Thank you.
All right. I'll see you on the internet. I started out the interview trying to make a comparison between Katie Wilson in Seattle and Zoran Mamdani in New York City, and they didn't want to make that comparison.
Why? Did you get a feeling of why they didn't want to? Because he's a democratic socialist? What?
Yeah, well, that was one thing. She's not a member of DSA. I mean, that was one thing. The other thing was that she's not in the spotlight. She's like behind the scenes.
Right.
But everything else, I mean, their policies, they're about affordable housing and affordable transportation, and they're both car free, and they both bike a lot, or Katie did before her kid. Anyway, I just thought there was a lot in common, but I guess they want to be Seattle.
Right, totally. And maybe they want Katie Wilson to be Katie Wilson and not Zoran Mamdani. So, but I thought it was really interesting. I didn't know. I've been to Seattle a couple of times. I really love it. And I think it is ready for some change.
Yeah. And I think, we're looking now for what's going to work. What are we going to do now? And it looks like focusing on things that everybody, at least in a city, can agree on is a winning strategy. And one of those things is that we don't want to be car centric in a place where people can get around walking and biking.
Right. And again, I think a lot of our listeners, and I would agree that can't be a left-right issue. It has to be an issue that we are all involved in and on the same side of, to protect our children, to protect our elderly, to protect our pedestrians and cyclists,
Yeah.
Charlie's News?
Yeah.
Hey, it's Charlie here with the week's news. From Streets Blog NYC, the New York City Independent Budget Office has reported that LYFT is charging Citibike users more than any major bike share program in the entire world, despite having the largest fleet in the world. As of 2024, there were 37,000 Citibikes. A 15-minute ride costs over $10 on a Citibike e-bike, and the yearly membership has risen from $95 in 2013 to $220 today in inflation-adjusted dollars. From Bike Portland, Families for Safe Streets Portland has introduced the Stop Superspeeders movement to Oregon. They plan to propose to the Oregon State Legislature a bill that would install speed limiting technology in the cars of those who repeatedly speed or people who have serious reckless driving or speeding convictions. The bill will likely be proposed in the 2027 session. On the topic of speed, CTV News reports that in Halifax, almost 50 speed display signs have been installed in areas with high collision risks, visibility issues, or to try to calm traffic. The results of the program? The signs limited speeds by less than 1 mile per hour. Oh wait, it's worse. Less than 1 kilometer per hour. The signs each cost around 4,000 Canadian. Maybe everyone needs speed limiters in their cars. In some positive news from People for Bikes, the aforementioned organization has invested $10,000 in St. Louis's bike network in partnership with the local nonprofit TrailNet. St. Louis seems to want to transform their city into one that is better suited for multimodal transportation. One example being the Tucker Boulevard cycle track, Missouri DOT's first protected bike lane that will span almost a mile through downtown St. Louis.
Well, you and I can both attest to the bike share in New York as being really expensive, and I think too expensive.
Yeah, I've talked about that.
Is that because it's New York City, do you think? And, New York City is just expensive, or is it because Lyft has a monopoly?
Well, like everything, it's both, right? They couldn't get away with it if it wasn't New York City, maybe. But I'm worried that, they have their eye on LA now, bike share.
Right. We had Dave Snyder on the show, and he's the one who talked about that bike share has to be priced to change behavior, to get people out of cars, to get people off of mass transit, even in some cases, and onto the bikes. And I don't think that amount of money is going to change people's behavior. If anything, it's going to change the behavior to not have them ride those bikes, I think.
Right. Well, I mean, Zohran Mamdani rode a city bike everywhere. So
yeah.
I don't know. We also heard about the Stop Superspeeders movement in Portland, Families for Safe Streets, speed limiting in cars. Now, that's an example of changing the system.
Right.
You can't, even if you're a super speeder, you can't speed if your car doesn't let you.
So I guess it's both there also, right?
Well, it's always both, yeah. But I mean, if you're going to focus your energies in something, I think it makes sense to do the small thing. But like if you pass a bill where you have to have speed limiters in cars, you do it all at once. Everybody's got to drive the speed. Can you imagine
Right.
if everybody
Yeah.
drove the speed limit?
It would be a different world.
And those other signs, like in Halifax, the ones that tell you how fast you're going, and then you slow down and it says thank you. I always say.
Does it say that? Did Charlie say that? I didn't hear that.
Oh, the ones near me say thank you if you
slow down.
Yeah. Which I like. Works on me.
Yeah, totally.
Some news that wasn't there is that the Consumer Product Safety Commission, is that at CPSC? Warns consumers to immediately stop using batteries for e-bikes from Rad Power bikes.
Right.
Due to fire hazard, risk of serious injury or death.
Does it say what people should do if they have a Rad Power bike? Should they take the battery off the bike and dispose of it somehow? What is the method for staying safe?
It does say the Consumer Product Safety Commission urges consumers to immediately remove the battery from the e-bike and dispose of the battery following local hazardous waste disposal procedures, whatever that is. Do not sell or give away these hazardous batteries. So, I mean, you don't have to get rid of the bike, but maybe they'll come up with a replacement. So we're talking about things that can have an effect on the overall amount of traffic violence. And we did an interview with the inventor of something called Dashcam and a Dashcam app.
Yeah, it's really cool. Armin Samii is the guy's name, and he developed this app that allows you to use your phone and a holder for your phone on your bike that it gives stabilized pictures and allows you to turn the camera on and off really easily. It's a pretty cool device.
So let's hear the interview.
Our lawyer, Jim Pokras, always says to us, if there's one thing you should do if you are in any kind of altercation on your bike, that is to record it. Nick, I don't record my rides. Do you, with a helmet cam or anything like that?
I don't, but I also always see anytime anything happens, people say you should have had a cam.
Yeah. Well, partly the reason I don't is because I got to have two hands for the most part on my handlebars. And I know there's helmet mounts and all that kind of stuff. But we just ran across an organization called Dashcam.bike. And well, maybe I should introduce its CEO, its founder, Armin Samii. Dashcam.bike is your organization. It's a handlebar device to hold your phone, but it's also an app. So I wonder if you could introduce yourself and tell us what it is and how it works. because I would like to record stuff a little bit more often on my bike.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell the story of what kind of led me to creating this, and I think all of your listeners will have a similar story. So in 2019, I was hit by a distracted driver. It was like stop traffic, and the bike path was free, so I was biking along past the traffic, and from a complete stop, this guy in a Ford F-150 swerves from a stop into my path, and I managed to brake in time, and I clipped the side. I actually hit his tires, so I had an injured pinky toe and a broken pedal. But like a couple more inches, and I would have been under a Ford F-150.
Wow.
And so I asked for his insurance information. I was like, look, repairing this bike is going to be cheap. It's a pedal, right? Like, I just want to have your information in case something worse happened to my bike. And he says, I won't give you my information until the police come. And when the police come, they say, well, we can't tell who's at fault. And I was like, hold on, you see that there's like a scratch on the side of his car where my handlebars hit it. How can I bike sideways into a car? Like clearly it was so frustrating that nobody would believe me in that situation. And so I ended up paying for, a new pedal out of pocket, for the injuries to my toe out of pocket. It wasn't that bad, but it made me realize that just the system isn't set up to help injured bicyclists. And if I had a video, there would be no ambiguity at all.
Right.
One of the issues is like, if you want to go buy one of those fancy helmet cameras, they're like maybe $400 for the 360 ones. And it's a hassle, right? It's like an extra thing to charge. It's an extra thing to like take the SD card out and plug it into your computer. And you have to learn that it's a lot of work. And there's a reason why with most photography, we've just used our phones.
Right.
And so that's what I wanted to do, is just like, let's get something cheap and easy. You already have a camera on your phone. Let's just use that. Let's see how good the footage can be made.
I'm looking at your website now as we're talking, and you show a picture of a normal phone or a normal photograph, being taken, film being taken, that's really bouncy and sort of difficult to watch. And then your footage is really quite stable. So can you explain how that works and what that is?
Absolutely. So we have what we call it a footage stabilizing phone mount. And what it does is it reduces the road vibrations and the shake that you get with a normal phone mount. And so through that, it's a really cheap phone mount. It's $25. It doesn't have any fancy technology. It's just the physics and the geometry of the phone mount really keep your phone stable. So there's different layers of padding, and we have software stabilization as well. And so all of that put together means that you get pretty good quality video, right? You're not going to beat a GoPro or a $400 camera, but you get pretty good quality video using just your phone and a $25 phone mount. If you just buy the comparison you see on the website is just like the top phone mount I found on Amazon, and you can just see that the footage is unusable. It's so shaky.
Right.
I would worry that my phone, if I'm recording for the whole ride, that's going to use up all my storage. Is there a way to, like, if nothing happens, I guess you just delete the video?
Exactly. So it does all of that automatically. So you say how much video you want to save. Say like, I want an hour of footage stored. And once it hits that hour, it's called a loop buffer. It goes back to the start and starts overriding the oldest footage. So you never have more than an hour stored. And then anytime something important happens, all you have to do is tap the screen and it will put a marker there, and you can save that to your photo roll or whatever. So you have that moment saved for later. So we make it really easy. You can save the moments you care about. It automatically deletes everything else.
So hold it. Because I often ride for more than 20 minutes at a time. I mean, I'm often on the bike for a long time. It will just record over and over that half hour or whatever time I set for it. So it's not eating up, like Nick said, tons of memory.
Exactly. Yeah. So even if you ride for 8 hours, if you set your buffer to 1 hour, it's just using just 1 hour of storage. And of course, if you're riding for that long, it also has a low power mode. And so what it does is while you're recording, it actually turns off your screen to save battery. But more than that, you can actually pause recording and just leave it on what's called standby mode. And that means that it's not recording, but often when you're riding, you get the spidey sense that something might happen. What I do on those long rides is I leave it in standby. And when I get the spidey sense that like there's a car speeding behind me, or maybe there's a cool descent I want to record, you just tap the screen anywhere and it starts recording again. And then you can record that part you care about. So you don't need to fumble through your phone and open an app or anything. You just tap the screen anywhere and it will start recording.
Right. Wow, that's really interesting.
So, yeah, you mentioned filming cool descents. It's not just for crashes or close passes, or it's for making those videos that people like to make on their bikes, right?
Absolutely. One of my favorite things is bunch bikes. If you have a bunch bike, it's like this cargo bike for families. It's a really cool company with these beautiful bikes. And oftentimes I see videos of parents on bunch bikes, and they've got this hood over the cargo bike part with their kid in the front. And there's like this rainbow hood and the kid sitting in the front, and it's a beautiful sunny day in DC. And they're biking along. Maybe they've got a dog in there, and they're going down a bike path that's just gorgeous. And I love seeing those videos, right? Because so often the only videos we see on a bike is, look at this horrible thing that happened. Right. And there's a reason we all love biking, and it's because of all the good stuff. The bad stuff is a minority, right? And so I really love seeing the footage of like, this was a beautiful day, and my dog saw another dog, and they started talking to each other at a stop sign. Like, those videos are really heartwarming to have come across my feed.
And this is also being used now already for data gathering, right? By, to find out places where there should be protected bike lanes, or to have, high injury streets or intersections.
Yeah, so we're based in Pittsburgh, and one of our very first partnerships was with the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure through a program called PGH Lab. And through that, we built a 311 connection. Now, 311 is the non-emergency line. So you call 911 if you need an immediate response, and 311 if it can wait a few days. So we built a connection from our video footage to Pittsburgh 311. And what we found is that the majority of what people in Pittsburgh were reporting were cars parked in bike lanes. And so we got hundreds and hundreds of reports of cars parked in a very specific bike lane. It's called Penn Ave. It's right downtown. It's one of our flagship bike lanes in Pittsburgh. And the bike advocacy group, Bike Pittsburgh, had been advocating for protected bike lanes for almost a decade. Since that bike lane went in, they're like, we need more than flex posts. Within 6 months of seeing our data, the city just got deluged with reports of cars parked in that bike lane, and they agreed to fund concrete protection. Wow. So that's a type of thing that we can do, is like, there is the story, there's the advocacy, and to boost that, you can have the data. The data does not work without the advocacy side, which is why that 311 reporting is only in a few cities right now. Because if you're just generating data to generate data, nobody cares. But if you are telling a story and you have a concerted campaign, and you're like, we want this thing fixed, and we will work with city departments, with bike advocacy orgs, to get them the data they need to boost their story.
Wow, that's great. So how does it work? You download the app, and then once the app is on your phone, you then open the app when you want to film, and that's how everything works?
Yep, you open the app when you want to film, you tap to start filming. It's all gesture-based, so I really focus on safety. And when you're riding, I don't want anybody looking at their phone at all. Right. And so all of the controls are just, you tap on the screen, you swipe on the screen. You don't need to take your eyes off the road to interact with the app while you're riding. Great. And then if you see something dangerous while you're recording, all you do is tap anywhere on the screen. It puts one of those markers down. And then when you're safely at your destination, you go to that marker and you give it a label. You say, report to 311, and say, like, this was a pothole, or this was a close call, or a car parked in a bike lane. And you take that and you hit submit, and it goes into the city databases so that the city can track all the issues.
Wow.
I hear good things about Pittsburgh. Like, it's got a good bike share, other things. How is Pittsburgh for riding?
It is getting better and better every year. So Bike Pittsburgh is our flagship. Bike Pittsburgh is our nonprofit bike advocacy group. I'm on the board of directors there, but I'm speaking on behalf of Dashcam Bike here, not Bike Pittsburgh. But they have done phenomenal work in the last two and a half decades. So before they started, bike lanes were really seen as something you put in parks, right? So the only bike lanes in the city were in parks, where it was really seen as a recreational thing. In the last couple mayoral administrations, we've created something called the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure, which does all sorts of things, but really focuses on traffic calming, complete streets, good bike policy, reducing crashes, right-sizing roads. And they get a lot of flack for it, right? Because everybody wants traffic calming where they live, and everybody doesn't want traffic calming anywhere else. And so it's a very tough problem, because the number one request for the city budget is more traffic calming. But when you talk to people, It's like, well, I don't like the speed bump over there because it slows me down, but I want a speed bump outside my house. It's like, okay, the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure has really focused on improving safety throughout the city, and that includes bike lanes, includes bike paths, and it's just transformed the city in such a positive way. And that could not have been done without the advocacy of Bike Pittsburgh.
It's always crazy how much effort goes into one bike lane and how much effort goes into opposing one bike lane. But it sounds like dashcam.bike can really help the movement move forward. It sounds like it's a great thing. How do people find it? They just go to dashcam.bike to download the app. How much is it? Is there a monthly fee? How does it work?
Yeah, so dashcam.bike is the URL. You can search it in the App Store. It's available for Apple and Android. It's totally free. There is an optional $1.99 a month subscription, which gets you better stabilization, gets you different dashboards. So you can when you're recording your ride, you can overlay a map and, show your speedometer and things. But all the core safety features are totally free. And I think that makes me a bad business person because I everything away for free. But
Sounds like you fit right in with Bike Talk.
yeah. It's important to me, right? And I'm building all sorts of new features. Like right now, I know that I get scared when my wife is out riding. So I built a feature really for us, but I can't wait to share it with the world, where when she's riding, I can tap into her video footage. But if they consent, then you can watch their footage as they ride.
That's cool. Are you designing this? Are you the software maker?
I'm the software, hardware, marketing, social, whatever I can do, I do. I definitely need help, but at $1.99 a month, it's hard to hire help. So
right. Well, Armin Samii, thanks so much for doing this. It looks great, and for coming on Bike Talk and telling us about it. Again, it's dashcam.bike if you want to have easy access to great footage on your bike. That seems like the place to go.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me.
I think I'm going to have to get one of those.
Yeah, I think hopefully we'll get a discount.
Right. We should, shouldn't we? I think we should.
Yeah.
And our last interview is back with Jim Cadenhead. And we've been talking about touring and about being able to fix your bike. And Jim is giving us some advice on adjusting and fixing disc brakes.
All right, cool.
Jim Cadenhead, Jim C, is back with us. And last time he was on, he threatened to talk about adjusting and fixing and working with disc brakes, which is great because I know nothing about disc brakes. Jim C, welcome back to Bike Talk.
Hello, thanks for having me again.
I have had caliper brakes forever. And on my new Surly, I have disc brakes, and they are hydraulic. I actually wanted to get mechanical disc brakes. Not that I know the difference in the two. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about disc brakes.
Sure. Disc brakes have really been on the scene now for almost 20 years. They've been a game changer, especially for mountain bikes, for downhill mountain bikes, places where people would get really bad brake pumps, so their hands would cramp up when they were going downhill for long periods of time, right?
Yeah.
The two different types of disc brakes are the mechanical, where you're pulling a cable, kind of like your old school caliper rim brakes, and then hydraulic, where you're pushing fluid through a hose. It allows you to apply a lot more pressure with a lot less friction. Gives you the most mechanical advantage and most stopping power that you can get on a bicycle at the moment.
Is with the hydraulic.
Is with the hydraulic disc brake. That's correct.
Okay. And, someone told me that you have to change that fluid or drain that fluid. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to adjust them. Help.
Okay. The most important thing probably is checking your disc brake pads, because hydraulic disc brakes, really, they self-center. So that means that as the pads wear, the pistons will push out a little bit so that your lever pull is always the same. Basically, that means in the old days when you wore through your brake pads, you would be pulling your brake lever all the way to your grip or all the way to your handlebars. With mechanical disc brakes, you still do that. As you wear the brakes, you still start pulling the lever towards your handlebars. But with hydraulic disc brakes, a lot of times you won't even know that you are wearing through your pads. So it is a good idea to take a look at your pads, become a little bit familiar with what they look like so that you can notice when you are wearing through your pads and those pads need to be replaced.
And how do you do that? Do you take the wheel off and then get a magnifying glass and look at it? I mean, it's kind of hard to see.
A lot of the times, if you have somebody point it out, or if you take it to a shop and ask them to show you this stuff, show you where it is, you can get in there with just a flashlight and have a pretty good idea of how much pad is left, how much pad is still available. You're really looking for the amount of pad that is on the backing plate. It's only 3 or 4 millimeters. It's not very much. So when you
Right.
wear off 2 of those millimeters, you now have worn through most of the pad. So it really does take a little bit of
Expertise,
yeah, a little bit of
Experience.
knowledge, a little bit
experience. Thanks, Nick.
of help to kind of like to see what it is that you're looking for.
Right. Okay. And then how do you change them?
Changing them is generally you want to pull your wheel, go in there with something flat and wide and push those pistons back. And you do that by putting it between your brake pads. Some people recommend something like a tire lever, or there are actual tools that look like really big, wide screwdrivers almost, flathead screwdrivers that go in and you just separate the brake pads. Then you pull out the pin that holds the brake pads in place and pull the brake pads and the spring that separates those brake pads out. So it's sometimes it's simple. Other times it's a little bit more confusing. So I think it's best to go in, because there are several different types of brake pads, to take your bike into a shop, make sure that you identified what style of brakes you have, what you need in order to replace it, so the parts that you would need and any specialty tools that you may not have,
Right.
and then figure out what it looks like when you have a full braking surface on the back of a pad and when you have one that is worn down. So, and that generally is something that I would say to take into a shop and to actually get a little bit of help with.
Okay. And does the shop sell those pads, or do I have to buy those from Amazon or something like that?
Most of the time I would say work with a shop, because there are, like I said, there are a bunch of different styles and they'll be able to hook you up.
Okay. And how do I drain the hydraulic fluid, and how do I put more fluid in, and where do I buy that fluid?
So the hydraulic systems are closed systems that will generally only bring in air if they need to repressurize, or if you've really worn out your pads, or if you've gotten a hole in the system somewhere in the hose. So it's not something that needs to be done super frequently. So it really depends on the type of system that you have. If you're doing it once every 2 years, that's probably fine.
Okay.
And I don't suggest that this would be something most home mechanics should tackle. This would be
Okay.
something that I would probably work with somebody in order to get done. And usually you're going to be looking in the neighborhood of $40 to $75 for a brake fluid flush,
Okay.
or a bleed is what they call it, a brake bleed.
Right. Right. Well, I heard, I forgot the guy's name, but some famous racer, some famous Italian bike racer, saying that he did not like disc brakes, but I love them. And this has been helpful, although I'm still not sure I can do any of this maintenance by myself.
The one thing that I think that is important for most average riders to recognize is that those brakes can get contaminated. Your rotors, your brake pads, they can get contaminated. The easiest thing to clean any of that off with is isopropyl alcohol. It's basically rubbing alcohol, the same stuff
Right.
that you would get at CVS or Walgreens or any drugstore. And you want to take that and spray it onto a paper towel or a shop rag that does not have any lint on it, and then clean off the surface of the rotor. That's something that you don't want to actually touch with your fingers.
Oh, and the rotor is that silver disc.
It's the big silver disc.
Okay.
Yep. That is a good thing to keep clean.
Okay.
It's also possible to pull out the brake pads, and if they get contaminated, to spray them with isopropyl alcohol and rub them down with sandpaper. And sometimes you can scrub off the contamination. But if you notice that your brakes suddenly stop squeaking and are much less effective, it's most likely that they're contaminated.
And that just means dirty.
That means dirty. They've picked up some oil or they've picked up something off of the street. So
okay. Well, that's great. I'll look into that. Meaning I probably won't do it. I'll take it to a shop. But you explained how the whole system works, and I really appreciate that.
They make a tremendous difference. The fact that the hydraulic brakes self-center really means that there's so much less maintenance than there is even on old rim brakes. And so really they make a huge difference in the lives of average riders. And the same way that you would do with your traditional bike with the ABC quick check, you still want to lift up both wheels before you go on a ride and make sure that when you spin them, the brakes aren't rubbing on your rotor, that your wheels aren't slowing down prematurely.
Oh, that's great. Okay. Well, Jim Cadenhead, thanks for coming on and explaining a lot of that. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I hope that helps, and I hope you guys have an awesome rest of the show.
Thanks, man.
Thanks. All right. Well, a good show today.
We want to thank our guests on the show. Nick, you had the panel from Seattle.
Yeah, we had Gordon and Brie and Merlin from Seattle Neighborhood Greenways, and we had Tom from Seattle Bike Blog.
And we want to thank Armin Samii from Dashcam and Jim Cadenhead from Battle Road Bikes. And of course, we want to thank our regulars, Julie Richard, Josh Hagland, Amy Ziering, Stacy Randecker, Lindsay Sturman, Charlie Lighthizer, and Kevin Burr.
Great. I don't suppose you have a bike quote?
Take our listener survey.
Wow. Is that going to be the quote?
Well, it'll be the quote for at least one more week.
All right. We're going to get the results anytime soon?
And then we'll get the chance to talk about them. I'm really excited. I've been really enjoying reading what people say, and they've been leaving us some great comments. So you can go to biketalk.org and take the survey. It really helps us to know more about you, the listener, and about what you want to hear and what you're into.
All right. Thanks, Taylor.
Ride safe.
This episode of Bike Talk is sponsored by the law offices of Pocras and De Los Reyes, with offices in Los Angeles and Bakersfield and serving all of Southern California.
Bike Talk is a project of CRSP and the Los Angeles Eco-Village Institute.
And that was Bike Talk. If you have a story, a tip, or a topic, head over to biketalk.org and send us a message. Talk again next week.
Get that car out of my way. I wanna ride my bike today. Keep it fit, get me there. I won't go stinking up the alley behind the daily grind. Let your mind unwind. If it's life, pretend to life. Better get yourself a bike.